Hey guys, Big Papa Bryan Post here. Christy sent me a Facebook link this morning and asked if I would do my parenting matrix style commentary on a recent event that actually happened on June 4th, which was my birthday in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And most of you guys know that I am from Oklahoma, born and raised. And actually, Christy and Marley and the Post Institute is based in Claremore, Oklahoma, which is right outside of Tulsa. So I told her to send it over to me, and I'm going to go through this video with you guys and share with you my thoughts during this George Floyd, Black Lives Matter point in the history of who we are and all of the challenges we seem to be having with race and perceptions, and you know, just give you my insights on how I am looking and seeing these sorts of things. So just gonna go here and open up the screen, and I'm gonna do this split screen sync because I feel like it's probably gonna give us the best. Well, you know, let me see real quick. Maybe there's a better view here. Let's see. My concern, honestly, is that this may, you know, eventually get taken down. Let's start here. So this is the initial. Two police officers. Let's look at this other one, because it basically, the two police officers were driving and they see the young boys, the young teenage boys. Let's see what this screen, okay. We do get some sound in a moment. So at first I thought that we didn't have any sound, but we actually are going to get some sound shortly. But so you can see they're following, they're just driving. Okay, let's just start here. Okay, so this whole, we're 26 seconds in. These police officers are driving down the street, and these two young black men, these two young black boys, teenagers, are just walking. The police car stops. You know, they roll down the window, the boys keep walking. We live in a powder keg society around race. There was really no reason. Now, there's two things here. There's no reason for these young men to even be stopped, unless the police officers had received a call about something and there was some legitimate reason. I don't think that's the case. You know, more may come out later, but I don't think that's the case. So we could, by all reason, call this profiling, which we know is very common, especially with black men and with black teenagers. In Tulsa, you know, this is the home of the Black Wall Street and the race riots in the 20s that destroyed a thriving black community. So there's always an underlying context of racism and police power and control here. Now, what I will say to you, and I really want parents to understand this and to hear me when I say it. Black parents have to, you must, it is imperative that you talk to your black children and teach them how to stop when an authority figure, a police officer, is asking them to stop. It goes beyond respect. This is not a conversation about respect. Respect comes from love. There is no love for the police force, unfortunately. It comes from common sense. You have to teach your children to stop and to be mindful of authority. especially during this day and age. And so if you're not doing that, you are setting your children up for failure. And I don't care if you are protesting. I don't care if someone just got killed by a police officer. You should be more motivated and more inclined to tell your children to pause for authority figures, to breathe. This is almost like what our slave ancestors must have felt when it came to dealing with the slave master. We are operating socially for Black people, brown-skinned people. We're operating under some of those same conditions. Stop. Direct your gaze down unless you're asked to look at. This is the saddest thing ever. This is the worst thing ever to have to say as a Black male in this society. It is the worst thing to have to say. To tell young Black and brown children that they have to stop because they could be harmed. But you have got to convey this to your children. You have to make sure your children understand this. It is not okay. It's not okay. But if they don't want to die, teach your children. When I get pulled over and I drive too fast, I get pulled over regularly. I put my hands on the steering wheel. Sometimes I put my hands out of the door. And if I am asked to show my driver's license before I move my hands, I say, man, is it okay to take off my seatbelt? My wallet is in my front left pocket. And I go very slow. I do not play games. I am a grown man. I have the greatest respect for the authority figures. I have the greatest respect for police officers. My brother was a police officer. I've got friends I grew up with who were police officers and highway patrolmen. I have the greatest respect. I do not feel scared, but I am conscious and I am aware and mindful, and I do not want to die because someone is looking for a reason. I do not. So you have to teach your children this. You have to convey this. You have to be adamant. So let's continue. These boys should have already stopped. They should have already stopped. I don't know if it's because they're scared. I don't know if it's because they feel like they don't have to, that they have not, but they should have already stopped. These police officers should not have stopped them to begin with, but these boys should have stopped.
Listen, man. You can't be walking down the middle of the road. Hey, listen, man. Don't do it.
The officer should never have had to put their hands on this young man. He should have stopped. But at this point, this is what happens when there's an amygdala hijacking. This young man was obviously scared. You can call it disrespect if you want to call it disrespect. You can call it not being raised correctly. You can call it not being spanked, or whatever you want to call it to explain his behavior. But I call it being stressed out. He's stressed out, he's overwhelmed, and he's triggered. He is dropped into an amygdala hijacking. An amygdala hijacking occurs when you experience a threat, and that then initiates a cascade of stress hormones that overwhelm your brain. You stop thinking clearly, your short-term memory shuts down, and you move into survival. Now, we do not have any idea what this young man's history is with authority figures of any sort, whether it's parents, whether it's police officers, or anything else. but we know a young black male in Tulsa, Oklahoma, walking on the streets has probably been through some stuff.
What y'all doing? You're not doing anything. You jaywalking. Hey, chill out. Hey, just chill out, bro. Chill out. What are you doing? Chill, man. What are you doing?
You have one, this is such an interesting exchange. You have one of these young black boys who is obviously a lot more regulated. He wasn't the one who was grabbed, but he's also the calmer one. And he's asking, what's going on? Why are you grabbing my cousin? Now the cousin is already escalated. Now the police, now we've just engaged into a dynamic of control. A dynamic of control. What's the worst case scenario? The kids don't stop when asked to. Worst case scenario is the police officers continue to follow them. Maybe they drive up right next to them. They ask them where they're going. Because see, now we're in a control dynamic. Protect, serve, and protect. Protect and serve is not control. It is not exerting my force and my will over you for no justifiable reason. We need to get really clear about that. But from here, we're 2 minutes in, we were 25 seconds in, it's going to go downhill.
Do it. You guys do it. Why are you trying to choke it? Why are you trying to choke his neck, man? Nobody's choking him. You're choking him, man. Nobody's choking him.
They're saying, why are you choking his neck? Obviously, the officer is not intending. I will say these officers were very calm. Their voices were not escalated. If they had him in a chokehold, it's how the police have been trained. I asked my brother once, can't police officers just start shooting people in the leg? Can't you just wound someone? He says, no, that's not how you're trained. You're trained to shoot to kill. If you pull your gun, you're going to shoot to kill. And so they're choking this. They've got their arm around this young man's neck. And what you have to understand, what most people don't understand, from a mental health perspective, you don't know what that triggers in the brain. He's already stressed and regressed. So any kind of, we don't know what people's post-traumatic stress disorder is. We don't know what their triggers are. We're not being trauma-informed. These are not trauma-informed officers. These are officers that are intent on exerting their will. They want this little black boy to stop fighting. Would it be great if he stopped fighting? Of course it would be great. But how many of us adults, when completely stressed and overwhelmed, are able to stop because someone tells us to stop? We are not. Thank God they are not completely overwhelmed at this point. That's the only reason he's still alive.
Just chill out. Oh, man, why you guys, bro, chill out, bro. Hey, man.
From here it escalates. You know, if nothing else, the George Floyd situation saved this young man's life because they are just a little bit more aware or a little bit more conscious. But what you didn't hear on one of these is that before, right as they're approaching the boys, they actually laugh. So they were actually in a good mood. So that tells me, and these are young black teenagers with two white males, so they don't feel as threatened. They don't feel, there's not as much fear going on in the dynamic, even though this kid is continuing to fight. The other little cousin, you notice, he's still there, he's present, he's asking questions, but he's not stressed. He's actually trying to help de-escalate the situation.
Why you put your hands on him? Why you arresting him? Why are you putting handcuffs on him? Because. Why are you putting handcuffs on my? Well, all he was hang on him, sir. All he was doing was jaywalking. We just want to talk with him. Does he have anything? He had to act a fool like that. Hey, sir, does he have anything? I appreciate you being cool, man. I'm just trying to tell you, he has nothing on. I have nothing on that, sir. Okay, don't reach it.
See that dynamic with a police officer, with a law enforcement official who is not regulated. That young man sticking his hands in his pocket out of nervousness could have gotten him shot and killed. See, because that is perceived as a threat. So if you're a law enforcement official and you're not regulated, and you're not thinking clearly, and that's why I said these two officers, they are obviously not in distress. They are not overwhelmed. They do not feel threatened because we still have a situation that's viable. This is clearly a situation of profiling. Clearly a situation of profiling, and it's gone bad, and now it's caught on camera. These situations have been happening for generations to Black people. There is so much generational trauma when it comes to authority figures, when it comes to white males, and when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to Black and brown individuals.
Bro, just chill out. I don't know why you say chill out. Okay, let him turn him in. You guys harassing us for no reason. We're just walking, man. Okay. Hey, walk down the street. Hey, Zach, chill out, man. Chill out, man. Right now. I'm going to do this small grown man. You all bitch out here. Hey, Zach, stab me, bitch, stab me. Fuck off, you man. Fuck off, you bitch. Stop. Hey, Zach. You're going to do something you're going to regret. Chill out, Zach. No, bitch. You're going to do something you're going to regret. Stick to your job. I'm just walking down the street, you racist bitch. We're trying to talk to you.
He said, you want to do this to a grown man. So he's calling himself a grown man. That is indicative of him feeling disrespected and violated and out of control. He feels helpless. He feels out of control. He feels disrespected in this situation. And yet he is acting like a child. He's acting like an angry, stressed out child. And so we have to realize in this moment, he is not in his rational brain. What could the police officers do at this moment? They've already got him handcuffed. They've already got him on the ground. They're already in this situation. They can't just uncuff him because it could lead to more violence. He says later in this video, he would swing on them if they let him go. So they can't. They're already into a bad situation. They can only make the best of it. One of the things they can do is make sure that they stop talking so much. They start breathing, keep their own system, keep their own physiology dialed down. Make sure he's in a position where he can breathe and just get quiet for a moment. Literally get quiet for a moment. It could be 30 seconds where they're not saying anything. They're just calming there's no threat in this scenario right now. There's no reason why they can't de-escalate this situation. They already have the young man in handcuffs. They're not going to let him go. But he's obviously having some kind of very intense reaction. And it's not just a reaction, as we want to say, as most people want to say. You want to say it's just him being a bad kid or him just having problems with authority or being disrespectful or wanting his way. He is in survival. And when we are in survival, we cannot think clearly.
Oh, you're jaywalking. Jaywalking, okay. What you grab my dick for? You gay as fuck. I wasn't grabbing your dick. Fuck off. You gay as fuck. That's it. What is wrong? Hell, bro. Hey, sir, you got handcuffs on. Hey, that's it. Tell him to stop touching my cousin like that. Let's chill out.
What would happen right now if they just moved away from the kid? What would happen? He'd get up, run away, maybe attack him, try to kick him. His hands are behind his back. He is in handcuffs. The only thing that needs to happen right now is de-escalating the situation. That's all that needs to happen.
Oh, man, he's chilling, bro. Stop touching him like that, man. Come on, bro. Why you messing with his feet, bro? Chill. Because he's acting out. No, so y'all follow me. We just walking down the street. What y'all follow me for? What y'all follow me for? What you follow me for?
They're asking for clarification on why they're being violated. And the police officers are just saying, hey, chill, relax. It's hard to chill and relax when you were doing nothing and now you're on the ground with two grown men with your hands behind your back. It's hard for anyone to relax. So it's very important for us to keep this in mind. And the reason that police officers continue to say relax and chill is because they don't have any justification in their minds in that moment for what to say about why they're being pulled over. They could say, if they had justification in that moment, they could say, we got a call, there's two suspicious young black teenagers, and we just need to check the situation out. Once we check the situation out, we can let you guys go on about your business. Okay, let's address it. Let's give them something they can wrap their brains around and make sense of. But right now, it's just increasing an already bad situation.
Because you were jaywalking. You broke the law. That's how would you use the crosswalk?
Now they're saying he broke the law. He didn't break any laws. Unless jaywalking truly is a law that you need to handcuff someone and put them on the ground. Everyone jaywalks every single day. That is probably nothing more than a law that's been created to justify these kinds of scenarios.
You're walking right in the middle of the road. Right here, you're in the middle of the road. Thanks, man. Just chill out, bro. What's your badge number, bitch? I just don't understand why you gotta put us up. We're not doing it. That's fine. I can't breathe. You're fine. I can't breathe. Hey, can you let him go? Hey, sir, I can't breathe. Hey, man, I'm still. Now listen. I'll get off of you if you want to act like your friend. Once you decide to act like your friend, what do you want me for? Can you listen? What do you want me for? Can you listen? What do you want me for? I don't want to take it. What do you think I'm on you for? Here. Because I want.
Total control and power trip.
Sir, he has handcuffs on. He has handcuffs on. What is he gonna do? Come on. What is he gonna do, sir?
It continues to escalate.
I'm tired of this shit. Alright, still out. I don't give a fuck. I'm just barely walking down the street, nigga. I'm going to my cousin's house. Fuck. Hey, can you just relax? Fuck your racist cracker and chill out. I don't give a fuck. You gotta start putting your hands on my. I don't give a fuck. On your rights, bitch. You don't need your job. Yeah, I walked off. You ain't had no reason to stop me. You ain't had no reason to stop me. We just told you, man. You ain't had no reason to stop me, bitch. Fuck no. Man, why was this officer? We just stopped to talk to you. Why you push me though? Yeah, why you push me, bitch? For jaywalking. Nigga, I wanna lock. Nigga, I wanna box, nigga. Let me out, nigga. No. You touch me. Don't take the seatbelt off. Punch me for. Don't take the seatbelt off. Shit on your little camera too, right there. What you fucking punch me for? Put your feet back in. Hell no, I'm taking this shit to court on my mama. On my mama, nigga, on my hand, nigga, I'm taking this shit to court.
I find it interesting that he several times he said, my mama, call my mama, on my mama. And what he's not saying is on my dad. And he's not saying call my parents. He's saying call his mama. And we have to give our young Black males more guidance on how to navigate the world safely, or we are going to see more of our young Black men and boys. We're going to see them in these situations, and it is not right. It is not right, but that is the current state and environment that we live in. And this is Oklahoma. This is my home state.
Okay. Do not headbutt me again. You understand? Do you understand? I'm not playing around. Do not on my face. Do not headbutt me again.
He's still escalated. The officer is now getting escalated because the officer's now been assaulted. So it's just getting worse. And the kid says, but it's not de-escalating the situation. It is just getting worse.
I don't give a fuck. This nigga up here punching me. Yeah. I hope you lose your job too. I'm sick. My city will kill you. All right. Let me out. Yeah, let me out. Let me out. You go for Katie. Let me out, nigga. He's spitting all over you. Let me out. Let me out. Yeah. Y'all been watching me. What the fuck you still never stop for me? Y'all been watching me. Y'all watched me the whole time I was walking. I'm not dumb. Fuck. Say it's not this bitch ass nigga just started punching me. Now I'm okay. I'm not worth it, man. It ain't worth it. Punch me for. Let me out these handcuffs. I'll beat your ass. What'd you headbutt me for? What you punch me in my stomach for? I headbutt you because you punched me, nigga. If I was out these handcuffs, I'd swing on you. On my mama. I know you would. Yeah. But we don't need to be violent with each other. We don't need to be violent. We don't need to be violent, do we? No reason. Fuck that. I was born to be violent, nigga. What you take me for? Yeah, I did the crime, but I'm innocent. Let me out this shit.
He said he was born to be violent. The police officers say you don't need to be violent, but they put him down on the ground and put handcuffs on him. And he's fighting. He says he was born to be violent, which is an interesting statement. It really makes me wonder what his birth history was like, what this young man's early life has really been like. And this is the thing. We don't know. We don't know. We keep profiling people, profiling individuals, you're making judgments of them, and then you create situations that you cannot manage. You create situations that just end up bad for everybody.
Hey, chill out, bro. It's not worth it. It's not worth it with this cracker.
And you still have the other young man who's saying it's not worth it, and he has his hands behind his back. See, this young man is at risk because he is stressed out, he is overwhelmed, and he has no way of regulating himself right now. I think this is really important to understand that a child, just like an adult at this level of escalation, cannot regulate themselves. He does not have the effective ability to regulate his brain. His cousin does, and he is using his rational brain. He is using clear thinking. He's trying to talk, but this little cousin does not have clear ability to regulate himself.
Punching me for what this cracker punch me though. No. You ain't handcuffed. He's trying to break my leg. Get your feet off the dash. Somebody do something about this. Keep your feet off the dash. Hey, why you grabbing my car like that? Okay. Sit right there and stop moving. You evil. You're going to hell. Bro, we both got handcuffs on. Why you got to put your hands on? You're evil. Officer, we have handcuffs. Okay. Hey, I appreciate you being cool. Just stay there. But your partner here wants to try to fight. We ain't gonna fight. Yes, I'm gonna fight. Yes. Hey, it's not worth it, bro. It's not worth it. I don't give a fuck, bro. They should never start this. What was your name, sir? Hey, sir, I'm in handcuffs. Why do I have to sit down? Because call my mama. You just sit right there. Call my mama. My name already in the system. Call my mama. Fuck out do that. We got.
He said, my name, call my mama, my name is already in the system. So it tells me he has a background, probably intensifies the profiling for this young man. He keeps asking for his mama. You know, he is a child. He is a child. And they keep just asking for some justification as to why they were pulled over.
Got a cage coming? Yeah. We're gonna call your mom once we get down. Okay. Call my mom. Okay, relax. Hell no. Bitch, get your nuts out my face. You gay as fuck. Like what you doing? Go grab me. Go grab me. Just stop.
It's all power and control at this point. You know, the police officer can back up. The boy is sitting down. It's all power and control. It's still a powder keg waiting to blow up.
Stop trying to kick and spit and fight. Oh, ain't no chill. Fuck you. Nothing on. Ain't no chill. Right, but we got just have nothing on us. Why are you still on all this extra? Which is why we're right here. Because he wants you to let him go. Why can't you let him go? He has handcuffs on. Officer, officer, we have handcuffs on. Why can't you just let him go? You keep saying that like I'm trying to talk something. It does. You have handcuffs on, which means you're being disabled. That's why you have handcuffs on. Okay. Nah. What you want to say? What you want to say? Fuck, lie to my face. I'm not saying nothing, bro. All right, bitch. You're the only one who's acting wild here. Yeah, nothing over there. Pulling me. Sir, he's on the ground. Why are you still touching? I'm helping him.
Oh, God. The kid de-escalates. He de-escalates. There's no screaming. And the officer feels like he needs to help this young man.
Relax. Just sit up.
That he's helping him relax. Oh, so much power and control. So much power and control. Now he's helping him relax. Obviously, the kid lays back on his back. He's not saying anything. He's de-escalating. And now we get more threat, more overwhelm. This tells you when adults start to get overwhelmed, they stop thinking clearly. Law enforcement officials have a responsibility to be able to think clearly in the midst of stressful situations. When law enforcement officials stop thinking clearly in the middle of stressful situations, bad things happen, and George Floyd is evidence of that, along with all of the countless Black and brown people who have been killed in the recent couple of years by law enforcement.
Sweater, he has hands sit. You have to sit. What the fuck I do? He fought and lay down right now. Lay down, nigga. No, he couldn't. You guys was to sit down. Get you out of the road. Why was you talking about sitting down? Just sit down. Sit down. Stay on the curb. You gotta sit down. How are they saying that to Jordan Floyd? No, my ass is hard. Shit to that black dude when he was on the ground with his foot on his neck.
Just have a seat. You were cool. No need to escalate this thing, okay? I appreciate your cooperation so far.
You let me go.
You probably can, but we don't even know who you are yet.
Can you let me go, officer? I'm trying to sit down.
Sit down then. Hey, are you going to sit down or am I going to put you on the ground? Appreciate it.
Bro, hey, just sit down, bro. It's not getting serious. Sit down, bro. The shit is not serious, bro. Yeah, man. Hey, Zay, get, bro.
What's your name, man? All right, we can unhang handcuffs now.
Thank you for being here. See, it goes much different.
Yeah, so you just visiting or visiting?
We do.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do. You see why these fucking protesters. Hey, Zay, bro, come over here and sit down.
You can't tell what happened to the other young man.
He doesn't want to sit down.
Zay, man, come over here and sit down, bro. It's not this serious. Just sit down, bro. Zay, hey, chill, dude.
Yeah, see? I mean, why does he got to talk like that?
It's so easy for us to place the blame on children. It is our responsibility as adults to guide them on the path that they need to take. And guiding and telling someone something, demanding something of someone are two different things. Thank God this young man did not end up dead. And I don't know how this is all going to work out. And it is unfortunate that these officers had to be involved in a situation that goes down like this, because overall, other than the profiling, it feels as though they're trying to at least be decent human beings. And that's sad. That's sad.
My goodness.
We do.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do. You see why these fucking protests are out here?
Buddy over this.
Oh, yeah, man.
But we ain't gonna let people headbutt us.
No point.
No, we ain't gonna shoot anybody over this.
Oh, yeah, man.
But we ain't gonna let people headbutt us,
see this
kick,
stuff
and
all
roll
the time in
around.
our community.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do. You see why these fucking protests are out here? Hey, Zay, man, come on.
The officer says he's not going to let anyone hit and kick and spit on him, headbutt him. But when you start a situation, I mean, you got to be willing to take responsibility. So that's my view of this situation. This did not have to happen, and there's probably a lot of situations similar to this that do not have to happen. And please, please tell your children that this goes beyond respecting authority figures. They need to be afraid of for their lives. You need to be afraid for them, because this situation, this world we live in, this society we live in, our country is not in a good place. And that saddens me greatly. God bless each and every one of you.